Well, good evening once again. Day 154 of the Biden administration. The Democrats have been blocked in the U.S. Senate. Today, they lost a vote that would have allowed just the discussion of voting rights. All 50 Democratic senators voted in favor of advancing the For the People Act, including West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin, whose support wasn't secured until late this afternoon, but it didn't matter. The Democrats needed 10 Republicans to cross over and go along to get the 60 votes they need to break a filibuster. But not one Republican voted in favor of even allowing debate on the legislation. Put another way, all 50 Republican senators voted no. While states are back home working hard to suppress the vote, or certain votes, should we say, there's not a Republican in the Senate who wants to even allow a debate on this topic. An angry majority leader spoke moments after the vote was announced.
Senate Republicans have signed their names in the ledger of history alongside Donald Trump, the big lie, and voter suppression. Today, every single Democratic senator stood together in the fight to protect the right to vote in America. The Republican leader uses the language and the logic of the Southern senators in the 60s who defended states' rights. This vote, I'm ashamed to say, is further evidence that voter suppression has become part of the official platform of the Republican Party.
In an unusual move, Vice President Harris presided over the Senate during tonight's vote. Afterwards, she vowed Democrats will continue pushing for federal voting rights legislation.
When we're talking about the right to vote, it is not a Republican concern or a Democratic concern. It is an American concern. This is about the American people's right to vote, unfettered. It is about their access to the right to vote in a meaningful way. Because nobody is debating, I don't believe, whether all Americans have the right to vote. The bottom line is that the president and I are very clear. We support S1. We support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And the fight is not over.
Since January of this year, just since January, at least 14 states have enacted 22 new laws that restrict access to voting. And right now, there are at least 61 bills with restrictive provisions moving through 18 other state legislatures. Yet Senate Republicans maintain, as was evident in tonight's vote, that there's no reason for the federal government to step in here.
There is no effort in any state in America to suppress votes based upon suppression of minority participation. What this is really about is an effort for the federal government to take over the way we conduct elections in this country. It is a solution in search of a problem. Regardless of what may be happening in some state, there's no rationale for federal intervention.
The Democrats' only real hope of passing any kind of elections overhaul now seems to hang on a long-shot bid to eliminate the filibuster. Tonight, the president issued a statement that read in part, quote, "Unfortunately, a Democratic stand to protect our democracy met a solid Republican wall of opposition. It was the suppression of a bill to end voter suppression, another attack on voting rights that is sadly not unprecedented." So, Sam, indeed, I'd like to begin with you, and I'd like to play this for you and our audience. We'll discuss on the other side. This is Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah tonight.
This bill was written in hell by the devil himself. This bill wouldn't make it easier to vote. This would make it easier to vote illegally. This is the Corrupt Politicians Act. If there's any chance this becomes law, it would be devastating for the country. This would be bad for everyone other than Democratic political incumbents.
So, Sam, how's bipartisanship going? And if that was meant for outreach for the Democratic Party, I think the senator has to work on his communication skills.
First and foremost, I don't think the devil wrote the bill. I think that's hyperbole. A bill was written by a number of Democratic lawmakers. It was amended, although that was never brought to a vote, by Joe Manchin to include at least one very Republican-oriented idea, which was a version of voter identification. Manchin's provision would have said you had to bring something akin to a utility bill in order to vote. So I think it's fair to say that Democrats did try to move a little bit in the Republican direction in order to win the votes, but really there was never a chance that they would. This was, I don't want to call it a messaging exercise, that sort of diminishes it. This was an exercise in showing where the cards were, essentially. This was the Democrats saying, look, we have 50 votes in our caucus. We want to move this bill. We notice what's going on in the state houses around the country. Let's see what Republicans have to say in response. And what the Republicans said in response was not just what Mike Lee said on Fox News tonight, but a resounding no to consideration of this debate. The big question now, Brian, is where do we go from here? What other cards does Biden have to play? What other maneuvers does the White House have? Our reporters have talked to White House officials about this. They concede there's not much they can do, though they're looking for different avenues, whether it's consulting with state House Democrats or leaning on corporate America to do essentially what they did in Georgia, which was apply pressure to lawmakers in the states to not go down this path. Neither of those options are particularly fruitful. So the White House is kind of stuck.
Jonathan Lemire, Stein just tossed you the ball. Pick it up and run with it. Where do we go from here?
Well, Brian, I keep it as a personal policy not to agree with Sam Stein very often, but he is largely right about all of this. The administration does feel like their hands are relatively tied. We should expect more public pressure from the White House. An aide signaled to us earlier today, soon after this bill's defeat in the Senate, that we'd be hearing more from the president on this, and his statement backed that up, that we should expect him to have not just public comments, but perhaps an event that's still being put together on this next week. We did hear from the vice president sort of speaking, let's be candid, she's speaking powerfully about the need to protect the right to vote. When her remarks earlier today after she presided in the Senate, but they're short of something really significant at the state level. Their only move here would indeed be to embark on some sort of filibuster reform. But the problem is there aren't too many Democrats who are willing to do that, or at least not enough. Joe Manchin, of course, is the leading figure of this, but he's far from alone. Kyrsten Sinema, another, she wrote in the Washington Post an op-ed just the other day saying it's not something she's supported. And we also know that there are some other Democratic senators who privately agree with them, but are happy to let them be the public face of this opposition. So short of that, this is going to be potentially a real disappointment for the Democrats and for Biden himself, who has said repeatedly that this was a lifelong mission of his to expand the access to the franchise, that he would do anything it would require to defend this, to expand the voting rights. This is an existential threat against democracy. It's part of his larger picture to prove that democracies still work against autocracies globally. It's harder sell if he can't say that their democracies are protecting the right to vote at home. So this is a legislative agenda that is quite full right now. But this is something that, though a huge priority for Democrats, may not be something that they can actually enact anytime soon without some sort of sweeping 11th hour change.
Cynthia, my friend, over to you. I don't say it often, but we need a lawyer. What is your level of fear for our country and a free and fair election if we don't have a federal remedy, something new where voter suppression is concerned?
Well, I'm pretty scared about it. You know, I live in Florida where just about anything goes these days with our governor. So I'm hoping very much that we'll figure out a way to get some of these bills passed, and particularly anything having to do with protecting this minority vote, because it looks like the Republicans will do almost anything to figure out a way to make it impossible for people to vote if they don't have just the right ID, or if they move, or if they do anything. So I am hoping that we can come to some agreement with Manchin and Sinema. It just doesn't seem very likely to me.